Hello, and thanks for watching. FSX is remaining popular with a lot of people, even though it's very old. It's not the best simulator by any means, but it's got some real advantages. You can run it on old PCs. I ran it for a couple of years on a PC that didn't even have a graphics card on it. There's tons of freeware stuff for it. It's perfectly adequate to learn procedures, navigation techniques. Okay, the flight dynamics aren't the best in the world, but I think there's a lot to be said for it. I drifted into it through a Steam offer and bought it for like £12, and that occupied me for the next year, learning how to go through checklists and flight procedures, navigation, ATC. Did me just fine, so it's remaining very popular. One of the problems though is the weather. And if you're flying on Vatsim, you probably want to be using the same weather as everyone else, and that is real world weather. When you select weather in FSX, you get the option to use real world weather. However, these real world weather settings don't work anymore. Apparently, sometimes you get some spurious weather that does come through, but it's not accurate. The service that provided that data stopped years ago. So there are a couple of options if you want to use real-world weather. Firstly, there are, I think, at least 2 freeware real-world weather engines. I used this one for nearly a year, FSX WX. Worked just fine, was really pleased with it. There's quite a lot of setting up to be done though. Some people say it's just too fiddly to do. I didn't have a problem with it, but it took a lot of careful reading. There was some extra stuff to install and get configured. So if you're happy with messing about with technical stuff, this could be the answer for you. If you're not so great at fiddling about with PC stuff, perhaps avoid that. I then moved on to Active Sky, which is just a brilliant program. So I had this one, Active Sky 16 for FSX. Got it in the Steam sale for less than this. I think it was just over £20. Really simple to use. You just install it and it just integrated immediately with FSX. And during a flight, it allows you to tweak the weather so you can keep elements of real-world weather and maybe adjust cloud layers and whatnot. However, what I'm going to look at today is what to do if you don't want to be fussed with either of that, and you're happy to spend a few minutes just setting up the weather manually. My go-to source for the weather in the UK is the Met Office. The reasons for this will become clear at a moment. I think there's 2 things that you need to do. First of all, you need to establish the surface weather at the aerodromes that you want, but also you want to know what the weather's going to be en route, and that's where this website comes into it. So if you first of all register for the aviation briefing service, so if you do a search for Met Office aviation briefing, spell it, service. Once you've registered, which is free to do for the basic functions, and then when you log in, come to this page, just click on Aviation Briefing Service. Okay, so we're going to start getting some data now. I'm going to plan, for the purposes of demonstration, a little flight from Southampton up to Compton VOR and then across to Bristol. So we need to look up 3 things. We need to look up weather on the surface at Southampton, at Bristol, and then the en route weather at a higher altitude. On the briefing service page, under aerodromes, type in what you're interested in. So we're interested in the METAR. There are loads of resources on the internet that will teach you how to read a METAR, but the information that you want is really easy to find. So this first section here is just the time. Pardon me, don't worry about that. This next bit here is the wind. So wind from 340 degrees at 12 knots. Then you also want to know the visibility. That's this bit here. If it says 9999, just basically means clear. The clouds are scattered clouds, 032, so that's the flight level, so 3,200 feet is the base of those. Temperature is 06. Dew point is -0. And the pressure, QNH, 1024. So I'm going to make a note of all that. And just to be really fancy, I'd also like to look up the regional pressure setting. Now, if you don't know about those, the UK is divided up into a whole load of regions. We can look into that by going to the NATS website that I've shown you before, and we look at the en route charts, and then come down to en route 618, which is UK altimeter settings. And this shows you the regions for which the Met Office will give pressure settings. So the areas we want to fly in are essentially, let's zoom it up a bit. So pretty much all the time in Portland, we're sort of coming up from here to about here and then back across. So we're just kind of skimming into Cotswold. Let's keep it simple though, we'll do everything for Portland. Because Southampton Airport is in Portland region, it's listed the pressure setting here, gives you the current and the next. So I'm going to make a note of the regional pressure setting there. Now, regional pressure setting is the lowest value that is occurring anywhere in the region, and Vatsim controllers will sometimes give you pressure settings. When you set that in your altimeter, you know that you will never be lower than what you think you are. You might be slightly higher, but you'll never be lower. Now I'm going to go back and get the METAR for Bristol. So slightly different at Bristol, a little bit less wind, good visibility, no cloud, temperature a little bit colder, and a fair bit of difference actually in the QNH. So Bristol is actually in the Cotswold region, but I'm not going to worry about that regional pressure setting just because we're keeping it simple. Now comes the really fiddly stuff. So the en route weather, when you are even at 2,000 feet, the winds will be a fair bit different to what they are on the surface quite often. Once you get up to sort of 5,000 feet, they can be really quite different. I don't know if there are any websites that give you the current winds aloft, but the Met Office will give you the forecast winds aloft, and I think that's what you would normally use when you're flight planning. And then as you go along on your leg route, you would check to see whether your plan was working. More than likely you'll have drifted to one side or other of the track, and you will correct that and modify your heading as you go along. So the way we look at the winds aloft is to go into briefing charts and look at significant low-level weather. There are two sets of charts here, 215 and 214. If we look at 215 just briefly to show you what it is, split into times. So here we are. This gives you a fancy weather forecast. Interpreting the readings here is a little bit fiddly, so you definitely need to look up to see how to read those. In this area here, which is area D, We've got good visibility. The cloud information is over here. So we've got some scattered clouds at 8,000. So now let's go to 214. This is the one that you really want. Where these latitude and longitude lines intersect, there's a little table that gives you the weather at that point. So this point here is kind of over the channel. That point there is sort of getting up a bit more Midlands. So probably going to sort of split the difference between the two. So I want to know what the weather is doing at, let's say, 2,000 feet and 5,000 feet. So at 2,000 feet, winds from 350 at 15. And here, winds from 330, 20. So I'm going to call it 340 at 17. And then I'm also going to look at the temperature. So that's -2, that's -2. So we'll call it -2. And then I'm going to make a note of the weather at 5,000 feet as well. So 350 at 15, 340 at 15, call it 345, and call it -4. Okay, that's enough of that now. Okay, so in FSX, to set up the weather, we can go here to change the weather. We're going to go down to user defined and we're going to customize it. Now the first thing to do is to set a global weather for the en route legs and to make sure that no other weather data interferes with our flight. You can set basic weather in this bit here, but we're going to go into the advanced weather. We first of all need to make sure that we're applying the weather settings to everywhere. So this will be globally across the world. And we'll set out the information that we got for our en route weather, which is going to be scattered clouds at 8,000. So there's no clouds there at the moment. We need to set a cloud layer. Scattered clouds. Have to make the top above the base, obviously, and it needs to be nice and thick if it's high level, otherwise it looks a bit daft. So put 10,000 and base of 8,000. Then the wind. So this is asking for surface winds conditions, which I'm going to just set something similar to one of the airports that we've already looked at. So we'll sort of split the difference between Southampton and Bristol. So we'll put 10 knots from about 320. So this isn't going to be an exact science, but weather never is it? Then we're going to set the en route higher level winds aloft. So add a wind layer. Set it for 2,000 feet. And Met Office said that it would be about 17 knots, wind direction about 340. So these two are very close together. I can't click on it. Let's move that out of the way for a minute. I suppose we could drop that down. And then another layer at 5,000 feet. So temperature at 2,000 feet was -2. We'll just make up a dew point. It's usually a bit lower than the temperature. Bristol pressure is 1024, Southampton 1024, Bristol 1032. So let's split the difference, 1028. We'll set another one at 5,000 feet. It was -4. Call that -5. And visibility I never set unlimited, always about 30 miles looks better, a bit more realistic. And we're okay that. Okay, so that has applied it everywhere, and you'll see that these basic conditions have changed now as well. So now we go to a specific weather station. We'll set up Southampton. That's already there. If it isn't, just click on it on the map. So clouds were scattered clouds at 3,200. And I'm going to make that layer fairly thin. And then the winds aloft weather report said that it would be probably scattered up at about 8,000 feet as well. And that needs to be nice and thick, otherwise it looks a bit daft from the ground. Wind was 340 at 12. So we want it to be sort of a seamless transition from surface winds up to the winds aloft. So again, if we make that 1500, and then we can go to the next layer up, 2,340 at 17. Oh. Yeah, and it's remembered what I've already set there. So during the flight, FSX will interpolate, sort of going from one layer to the next, and you'll see a gradual transition. Pressure at Southampton was 1024, and the temperature at ground level, so we've got the one at 2,000 and at 5,000, so we'll just now click another one to have that at ground level. Oh yeah, can't have it below ground level, 42 feet. Temperature of 6, dew point 0. Visibility, yeah. Good, so that's that one done. Now I just need to find Bristol. Click on it. Good, and that is finally it. So going through this slowly, explaining what I'm doing, it's taken about, what, 15 minutes? With practice, you can just do the bits that you want fairly quickly within about 10 minutes. Right, let's fly. On the ground at Southampton then, and if you don't know, you can do get Shift and Z to bring up this little display of what the current weather is. So we programmed in winds 340 at 12 roughly, so that's correct. And the barometer, so let's press B to find out what pressure the simulator thinks it should be. So that's giving the correct elevation, and 1024, which is what we programmed in. Good. So let's get in the air and we'll use the autopilot to take us up to 5,000 feet. So I think it tends to stick rigidly to the surface winds till you get out of that surface winds layer. So we should see that changing now. Yeah, it's coming up. And let's press B to see if the pressure has changed at all. Yes, it has changed a little bit now. 1025, so the pressure is going to start changing to those winds aloft values that we put in. 4,500 feet now, and you can see that we're just above that cloud layer, just getting to the top of that cloud layer that we put in at 3,200. And we've got some very strange looking clouds higher up, so with hindsight probably should have made that cloud layer thicker and made them increase the coverage a bit. That looks a bit strange. So 5,000 feet, we have the correct winds aloft. I mean, this is never a precise science. It's never exactly what the forecast is going to be, but it does influence your planning. So here's me going along there, and you can see that our heading is, well, quite a few degrees to the left of track. We're into a bit of a headwind here, so it's not that pronounced. When we go across the other leg, the difference between the 15 knots that we're getting at winds aloft and the 7 knots that we have at Bristol is going to become very significant. So with that strong crosswind, our wind correction angle is about 7 or 8 degrees here, and it would be half of that if we were using the winds that were at Bristol, which are half as strong. So I'll just do some maths on that. So my rough calculations say that on this 46-mile leg here, if you just used ground wind like you had at Bristol instead of the winds aloft, difference in your wind correction angle would be about 4 degrees, and that means you'd be over 3 miles further south at the end of this leg. Obviously in the real world you'd be monitoring it as you went along, and you'd be correcting at least halfway, if not before. But for basic flight planning, that becomes significant. Okay, going to start descending now, and going to use the autopilot to engage the glide slope there, the localizer. So we've still got the winds aloft value. Let's ask it what it thinks the pressure should be. 1030. Midway now between the en route pressure and the Bristol pressure, so that's looking good. And as we come down, you'll see the wind changing to the Bristol values, and as we get closer should see this. So that's just high level cloud remaining good. Yes, so the low level cloud has gone because we told it there was no cloud at Bristol. Here we go, just dropped down below 2,000 feet, and this is starting to change now. It'd be nice if it changed a little bit earlier actually, so with hindsight maybe I would have got rid of that lower en route layer at Bristol and just manually set it up, because you don't really want a strong crosswind till the last minute, do you? And don't take this video as an example of how to land a plane, because I know this isn't right. I know we should have slowed down first and intersected the glide slope from below. So the wind has dropped down a bit, but not a great deal, but close enough I think. Okay, there we are. So, bit of a fiddle to get all of that set up, but if you want to fly on Vatsim and you want to be able to use the pressures and the winds that the controller is telling you about, this is one solution for you without having to buy any further software. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye bye.